Hi.
What's up?
Yo.
Welcome to episode 13?
14. No,
14.
13. I'm kidding.
13.
I'm lucky number 13.
Lucky number
Hey.
13 episode of the APE Audio Podcast. We're sitting down with Nathan Bulla.
Hey, how's it going?
That's me.
Hey! Nathan is the drummer for local band Auras and Ontario local band Intervals as well. I'm also sitting down with my good pals Patrick,
Yes.
Ian,
Hey.
Devin. Alan's over here with a
Devin's
camera,
waving.
so we might get some real hot snaps.
This hot chick.
And Evan's also lurking in the corner.
Hey.
As promised.
All right, let's get this cracking.
Yeah,
You guys all have a good week?
That's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Cool.
The week's just started, dude.
No, it's the cumulative week. How many
Nope.
times do we have to go
Nope.
through this?
We're not doing this again.
Nope.
What, you guys don't want to talk about it?
No. What I want to talk about is who Amy is and why she's being chased.
Oh, jeez. I haven't had that question.
Right into
in
the hot seat.
8, maybe 10 years. I can't remember.
Did that specific question with that wording come up before?
Me? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Multiple times.
Damn
To all of us. Yeah, my high school band, Chasing Amy. Actually, there's a fun. So do you guys know about the movie Chasing Amy?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't remember exactly how this went, but I believe my guitar player said he emailed the Kevin Smith, his company or something like that, and he basically asked if we can use the name because we'd been using it. I guess they'd been using it before he even got in the band, and they said no.
Kevin Smith.
So
not
we're
expecting
like,
that.
so
Yeah.
what we kind of, I think he maybe just looked into what we can legally do. Maybe he asked them straight up, and they just said, you just can't use that spelling. So we just changed AMY to AMEE. And I don't think I've ever met a girl named Amy, like spelled that way. It's usually AIMEE or AMY. So we thought that was, at least a unique thing to
The
do.
funny thing is about that spelling, I was like thinking about this in my head all day, and I'm like, what if they're not called Chasing Amy? What if it's like Amy? What the hell am I gonna do when we ask this question and we're just
You're
totally
gonna
wrong?
screw this whole thing up.
or an acronym. People thought it was an acronym for something, and we tried to make something clever up to make that happen. But
Such
it
as?
never made any sense. I can't remember. I honestly.
Oh.
Yeah.
There we
yeah.
go.
Exactly. Yeah. Something along those lines. A little less cheesy maybe, but we'll see. I mean, that's obviously it's defunct.
Speaking of cheesy,
Yeah.
we found this
Boy, did
supercut,
we ever.
and we don't know if one of you guys made this or if you had one just diehard fan. Do you want to check this out?
You don't have a choice.
I wonder what this is. Oh my God. I don't know if I recall this. I recall the pictures. I don't know. I mean, this is crazy.
Here, Devin, you want to pause and we'll give him a bit of a refrain? He could try to explain himself.
I mean, well, here's the worst part. I think is that it could be something I've seen before and knew where it came from. Like we were so ridiculous that this could be something that one of the guys did, and they showed us all one day, and I just don't remember. But I don't know though.
I hope one of the
It
guys
doesn't
didn't
look
make
like
that.
it looks like something I would remember, especially the music. Like I feel like I would
There it is.
have had that.
Ooh, the leopard
That
print.
memory of some sort. But yeah, those are all pictures I remember. That's from our first show ever.
How old were you guys?
16, 17. Jeez.
We were really trying to scrape the internet to find some stuff.
I mean,
Chasing Amy.
that's
And this
quite
is
the stuff.
This is like one of the relics.
That is. I don't know
Yeah.
if you could beat that.
There it
And
is.
yeah.
There's the sweetness.
Does it make you feel
Yeah, we-
weird looking back at these kinds of things?
No, not really. I mean, sometimes I get reminded. People
Oh, that.
What, the MuchMusic?
Yeah. How'd that
Uh,
happen?
That was we got on the show Disband, the first season that it was at, which was like they did half-hour episodes, I think. I can't even remember actually.
Yeah. Vote for them on
Yeah.
Supernova. Sorry, but
Yeah.
Oh,
Jeez. Yeah, that was
Supernova.
so that was actually at the photo shoot. So we did this photo shoot, the leopard print, in the bathtub with the models and all that stuff.
Who came up with the idea?
Well, that was actually the photographer. This guy Matt Barnes. He's a brilliant photographer. He's done work with Snoop Dogg and like everyone that you've ever like thought of in celebrity world. Like he's
And the best he could come up with was get in the bathtub,
Well,
boy.
Yeah, he had this. Well, we got there. It was for the show, and he had this whole lab. They were like, we're gonna do a professional photo shoot with a professional photographer. And we get there, and they had this whole elaborate thing already set up, and they brought these girls in, and we met them, and then they were like, "Here's
Where
your."
were the girls?
I don't. They were just models that they brought them. I can't remember. They must have been like they must have worked with him before, but I remember distinctly. There's one guy with a thong on, leopard print thong, and I remember we all had to like pick out of the hat to get our garment. Basically, there he is. Yeah, Ryan.
That's a fair way to do it.
Yeah, and he drew that, and so he had to wear it. And
He doesn't look very happy.
I mean, there was mixed emotions all day. We were drinking spiced rum or something like that at this point too, because it was freezing too. We were like wearing nothing basically, right? Yeah, this would have been 2000 and shit. I can't remember 2008 maybe, 2009 probably.
Would you ever consider showing Oris some of this stuff and maybe?
Oh, I'm sure they know about it.
Like this
Well,
going with them?
this is what got them. This is what.
I mean,
ask
I've
him to
known
join them.
Aaron most of my life, so I mean, he probably watched this all happen, like at least briefly, you know, like while it was going on. And I remember when I first joined the Oris crew, they had done a little bit of back research.
Sure.
They just checked up on what I used to do and all that. And
Do you think?
obviously, this
Do you
stuff
think
came
when
up,
they
so.
initially talked with you, they were like, "Don't bring up that video"?
Well, I think the funny part was that at least in the local scene area, there's a lot of people that were really confused because they're like, the Oris guys are playing technical metal, and this guy played bubblegum pop punk, like with these goofy, like teenage dudes, and it didn't make any sense. And I think they were like, it seemed to me that they welcomed that massive change.
Sure.
And it just sort of sparked a little bit of not controversy, but it was at least a little bit of a talking point, I think. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially when you guys were like that young, right? Like, I mean, you've only kind of showcased your chops through like one band at that point.
yeah. Well, I was all about committing to a project and just being as focused on no matter how simple the parts, being really focused on playing those parts as best as I possibly could. And I think that like that band was such a huge thing for me because it just taught me the importance of simplicity. And when it came to adding tons of notes, with the Oars guys, it was just a matter of adding things. It wasn't a matter of figuring out how to play the drums
Sure.
the way I wanted to play the drums.
Right.
So yeah, it was only, I mean, if that picture was in 2009, my first Oars show was I think 2011 or something. So it was a pretty quick change within 2010 or so. I met them. So yeah, it was. There's definitely been a lot of different stuff going on in my life.
So I take it you didn't get the disband label deal?
Well, we got the thumbs up. Like it was just a thumbs
nice.
up, thumbs down
Okay.
situation. Like,
We were trying to remember how it worked, but there's like no episodes or
Yeah.
anything we could find.
I don't even
Just
know.
remember abandon all ships.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was the second season.
Oh.
And that was formatted
are
a little bit
OGs.
differently. Well, it was formatted differently the second year, so I'm not even sure how the show exactly worked. I know other friends of ours were on it. But that first year, yeah, it was just like one episode, and then I think the only band that got signed that year was Stereos.
Cool.
And I think we all know how that went. But great guys. I ran into the drummer not too long ago who works for one of my old mentors in Toronto at Grayson Matthews, who does all kinds of post-production stuff for huge companies all around the world.
Right
So,
on.
yeah, they're, I think they're all doing pretty well.
So how did you joining Oars like initially come about?
I guess it was pretty simple. Like I said, I've known Aaron for 22, 23 years, just through family. I'll briefly tell you how I know him, which is just kind of a weird thing. My not aunt and uncle, they're like fake aunt and uncle because it's my dad's business partner, married my mom's best friend from high school. And so my dad's business partner is actually brothers with my dad's sister's husband. So my dad's
Fake
sister
aunt and uncle.
married Eric, and then Eric's brother is my dad's business partner.
Okay, interesting.
And then my mom's best friend is the mom. So, or is his wife. And their backyard is adjacent to Aaron's parents' backyard.
Oh, okay.
Growing up, there's for some weird reason there's a gate between the two backyards, and no other backyards that they're adjacent to or linked have gates. And they had a pool, and we were young, and we'd go over there, and hang
Hell
out
yeah.
and go for
Cool.
swims and stuff like that. So yeah, I know him through basically close family friend of my whole life basically. And then he joined probably the Auras guys a few months before and was like, hey, we're working on this project, and they've got some guys, but they weren't sure if they had a similar vision with what they wanted to do musically, like with progressive stuff and just polyrhythmic weird ideas, and just basically to push the limits. And he was he just briefed a couple bands like Periphery, Born of Osiris, Volumes, Veil of Maya. Maybe I'd only heard of Periphery at the time, so I was like, I like that band. That was the band that sort of got me to think that I could potentially play metal.
Right.
Before that, it was like, why would I attempt it? Because I'm not a double kick player.
Yeah.
Like a straight fast double. I don't blast beats, nothing like that. All that stuff to me is just it's not the way I've sort of trained my body to behave on the drum kit.
Do you think it's because Matt has like this almost poppy sound to the way he plays?
Yeah, well, I think that he comes from a similar background as I do, where he didn't play metal for really a long time. He played a lot of single foot stuff. He and I have talked about it a couple times. He's, he played in a funk or hip hop type band for a little bit, and he's played with just a handful of different, I think a punk band maybe. He's just done a bunch of different stuff. Probably played in a reggae band, probably played in a folk or pop band. He's just really well rounded. And when it comes to playing metal, in that side of things, you can hear what comes out of him. You can hear that that's not a product of just playing metal music.
Definitely.
Or even focusing on metal primarily. It really doesn't come from the classic, world of metal that we're used to.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like it's sometimes an overlooked aspect of a lot of like prog metal bands is the drummer, right? Like there's so many groups where a lot of the dudes rocking the percussive arts kind of have a really samey, similar sound to them. I think it's really important to kind of encompass several other little genres into like your repertoire, because it can really like liven up a mix a lot.
Yeah, and it could just sort of change the way that you decide to orchestrate parts, or what you deem possible or not possible.
Sure.
There's some things that the guys are throwing at me, and I'm like, I don't think I can physically do that.
Right.
But sometimes you slow it down, and if you slow it down enough, especially in the world of like this groovy kind of prog metal stuff, it starts sounding like a funk song, or it starts sounding like a really kind of slow, just groovy jam. And if you really just get that idea in your head and you get used to that really slow version of that groove, it sort of means something else to you. It
Definitely.
sort of means a little bit. There's a little bit more sort of center focus, on the downbeats and on the quarter notes and things like that. And you start feeling that a little bit more naturally. So when you speed it up again, you just sort of, I think, have a little bit more of a handle on
Right.
that.
Yeah, that makes
kinda
sense.
thing.
Totally.
And then also when you get to live, your adrenaline's pushing everything and you want to play things faster, so everything feels slower. And even though it feels slower, you still have control over it because you've, explored what it feels like and sounds like when it's, at a completely different tempo.
Sure.
It's completely different.
Right on. Patrick, do you want to ask the man about his little throne?
Yeah. There's an interesting video of you playing drums on a toilet.
Oh, yeah.
What inspired you to make that video?
Well, my parents went away for like a couple weeks or something, and I remember.
I've always wanted to play in
What?
the washer.
You know what? No, it was a picture. There was a picture on that someone sent me. It was like a meme, basically. And this is, what year is this? 2010 or something? It was like one of those old original like internet memes, and it was just, but it was a drummer thing. It was just this drummer sitting on a toilet, but a drum kit was in front of him, and so he set up his kit with the obviously the toilet as the stool or as the throne.
How long did you keep that set up?
I just put that up and made this. Basically, I came across. I just tried to pick a song that didn't need anything more than hat, snare, and and kick, because I obviously couldn't fit anything else in there. And I just figured, why not do it in the smallest bathroom that I have access to, you know? Actually, not really the smallest one, but
That is a pretty tight bathroom.
yeah, it was. I don't know. I was in this mood to do some covers that were just out of my comfort zone and not what I could excel at, and necessarily, and just have to kind of focus on the bare bones, like not having any crashes, like just starting.
Yeah.
That's not an easy
So fucking
thing,
crazy.
at least for me to accomplish. I spent a lot of time since then playing with bands, trying to do things like this and focus a little bit more on time and space and all that stuff. But yeah, this was just a challenge for me. There's I think there's a towel taped up to it. You can see at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
That's like a little 12-inch snare.
Well, it's really cool how this process just kind of lets you like think outside of the box, or lets you think more inside of the box, but in a good way, because it's not, you're less focusing on like, oh, there's all these things like I can potentially hit. It's more just like, how tightly can I play?
Yeah,
the
and
least amount of
yeah, and that goes hand in hand with my just comment about my old band being such much more simplistic stuff, and like you can focus on really what's important, and then when it comes to adding pieces to it, when you add a new crash or a China cymbal or you do new parts or whatever, then you are just adding it in a place that like you can sort of see that it belongs beforehand, because you're playing a more stripped down version of it.
Sure.
As you add things in, it doesn't become a brand new thing. It becomes just an augmentation of what you were already
Right,
doing before,
right.
you know?
Interesting.
That's at least how I often approach stuff and try to teach. That's sort of the method that I teach, because I think it's never failed me. So, I don't know. I just go with that.
Would you ever mess around like that again, like nowadays? Like just for fun?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I actually just finished setting up kind of a little video area in my room, like my drum room, so I can start doing this stuff. I don't know if I'm going to do cover songs necessarily. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to focus a little bit more on just drums
Sure.
in general, but I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to do that yet. So, yeah, we'll see. But yeah, really for the longest time, it was just because I didn't have a facility or didn't have a space to do this stuff. And that's why I took the advantage of that, because they went away. I think my parents went away for a week or a couple weeks, and I just brought my drums over to their house and like brought my recording equipment and I think the other reason behind that bathroom one too is because I can only use 2 mics, 3 mics.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you about that.
I think it was 2 mics actually. I'm not positive, but
Well, your parents must be very proud of you. Most kids would show up and trash the house and steal all the food and steal all the booze, and you show up with
It's not
a
to say he
snare and a
didn't do
kick drum
that.
and sit up on the fucking toilet and play some drums.
the funny part, I can't remember if it was this weekend or this week in particular that they were away. Maybe it was another time. It must have been after. I don't know. It was around the same time. It could have been the same week. But I think my most the playthrough that I get told about most, like people are like, oh, I saw your one drum playthrough of the Aura song Chimerical. That was in their living room. The same thing. It was like the same. I don't know if it was the same weekend because I didn't bring microphones for that situation. It was just like a miming video, which ended up being a little more difficult than I thought it was. But yeah, I took advantage when they went away. I brought my drums over. I brought camera over, and I filmed that video in their nice living room. And I remember like months later, my mom was like, when did that happen?
That's funny, man.
I was like 21 or something like that. So they're like, again,
How are they going to be mad? How are they going to be mad?
They're like, well, we couldn't tell. So I mean, I guess that, I don't know. Maybe they were a little bit, little.
They weren't mad. They were just disappointed.
Yeah, no, just sort of worried that maybe I broke something and they didn't notice it. But they're Hawkeyes, so I'm sure they're fine.
She's just like looking in the china cabinet in the back, just like,
it's
are
more
they
my
all
dad.
there?
My dad would walk in and be like, that coaster moved on that table over there.
Where's my Hummels?
Is he on that thermostat?
Oh, Well, I mean, I'm sure, but I think they got it regulated to the point he's on the vacuum like you wouldn't believe.
Oh,
And I'm starting to inherit that too.
The
a little bit.
vacuum?
Yeah,
It's a strange
Do you
thing.
get any of those traits like on tour or anything like that? Do you realize you're like, oh, I'm kind of
Kind of vacuuming
Yeah.
a lot.
I mean, that's sort of a thing actually. Like we got a better vacuum on that we get to bring like every time we get the sort of the bus vehicle.
Yeah.
And it's like a great vacuum, so it's a joy to use.
Oh my
Is it a
God.
Dyson?
Where it's like
it's happening.
and I'm in there when no one's there. Because it's pre-show, because everyone's in the green room, and I just go back to warm up by myself or something, and then I just vacuum to my heart's content, and no one can say anything about it, and
That's amazing.
everyone's happy because everyone gets back in and it's an environment. And,
Holy shit, dude. That's hilarious.
but yeah, I definitely get that for sure.
So,
from my
what
dad.
vacuums do you recommend?
I really want a Dyson, but I don't think I can ever pinch that coin out there.
Oh, you could.
Yeah, those are expensive.
Sponsorship.
Yeah, I'm
Get that Dyson sponsor.
actually, yeah, for the studio, that would be great. I'll stick
Get
it
it for a
right in the
drum
back
rug.
corner with
Get it
like
for
a
your
light.
drum rug.
Yeah,
There
you
you
know?
go.
And that's the one thing I think that that's the reason I think I started becoming more enthused with the vacuuming, just because it's a mess. Like
Yeah.
my drum carpet is
Yeah.
just a mess. Like I could vacuum it.
I don't see a single
completely
chip
and
in
then-
sight.
Yeah, no, it's a mess no matter what. Like, so I'm always
Oh
on it
my
to try to
God.
make it tolerable, So, and it doesn't help that it's a black carpet.
Yeah, that's a totally valid point. Up until this point, I would have said you're out of your mind.
Yeah. Well, I totally am out of my mind. It's just a matter of it's the amount.
Shout out to Dad for passing down the vacuuming hobby.
Dyson.
And the
Shout out to
music,
Dyson.
he gave me the music, so I think
That's
that
fair.
made
Yeah,
it
well,
important.
what kind of role did your dad or both parents play? And
Well, my dad's a piano player, or he played organ and piano, and he went to choir school actually as a kid, K to 13. choir
cool.
school.
What is choir
All
school?
boys choir school.
Do those even exist
school.
anymore?
Yeah,
know,
man. It's
Kids come together and sing.
Yeah, it's
Come
like-
on,
yeah, it's
Christian.
Is that like outside of regular school?
No, it is regular school, but you do.
Unbelievable.
Do they sing all the lessons?
No.
It's High School Musical, dude.
They I think they just spend you definitely get organ lessons, and you definitely get, or piano at least. You definitely get vocal lessons. They spend more time on the music side of
that's
things.
awesome.
St. Michael's Choir School in Toronto. And he actually goes to the alumni events and stuff all the time. Like go to the
Cool.
Christmas choir concerts and all that stuff. So he is a fantastic keyboard player. Like he's hilariously good, but he never plays that much. But he's getting I don't
Play
have
it,
to
you know what I
anymore
mean?
because he's
Oh,
he's
okay.
got his own band that's a
Oh,
little bit
cool.
more regular than his other band that I kind of grew up with. And his other band, they still play once a year at Bulla Fest every year, our family party.
Bulla Fest.
Yeah, it's a
Tell us
huge
about it.
thing. It's gonna be the 16th year this year. It's his 60th birthday as well. A couple days before that. So, and that's the day before I leave for our second Europe leg. So I get to be there this year for Bulla Fest, which is great. Big party every year. But my cover band plays. We got friends and family that play. We got a whole stage and like a big tent, and we got like 200 people that come, and it's a big potluck thing.
Cool.
With my dad's band plays, and they close up the night, and they're just legendary. He's got horn players and
What?
yeah, it's
That's
Like,
awesome.
it's quite the event.
Are we invited this year?
Yeah. Yeah,
Hell
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful.
In
Hell
fact,
yeah.
it's sort of falling on me to start adding more people to the list because it's becoming, it's just like people have lives and you can't come every year. We've had a lot of people that have come 10, 12 years even, but it's like, once in a while some of that stuff dies out. And my sister's friends from university, they've all got kids and all that stuff, so they're not really coming around anymore. And this year I brought more people than ever, and they were like happy about it. So I'm making a point to invite more people.
Well,
to
that
Bulla
sounds
Fest.
wicked awesome. If your parents want to see some other vacuuming enthusiasts,
Well, and
We go
the
pretty
idea
crazy.
is-
So
Yeah.
music.
it's just a big fundraiser that the whole street shows up, all our family and friends show up, and they raise money for St. John's Kitchen and Champs Waramps, I think. And yeah, it's like, and my dad gets like a keg or two, and like you bring your own booze. You just and you can bring a tent and hang out, and there's just music all day. So yeah,
that
we've
sounds
been doing
awesome.
for a
Yeah, that
couple
sounds
decades
crazy.
now,
So, I assume at some point the torch will fully be in your hands.
I've always thought about that and almost worried about it, but I feel like when the time comes, but my dad's not slowing that stuff down.
Right,
anytime
right.
soon. He's a champ. Like he's so invested in it. Like He's so focused on it every year. Like he literally plans the date and sends out an email within 2 to 3 weeks after Bullafest happens.
Oh,
So July
jeez.
20th
Holy
or
crap.
20. What I can't remember what it was this year. An email came. I saw an email like 3 weeks later. He was like, "All right, July 20th next year." is the next
Wow,
Bullafest."
that's
Every time, yeah.
awesome, man.
Because he needs to get the band together because everyone's like teachers and I mean people are retiring more and more in his group of friends, which is helpful I think in that capacity. But yeah, like it's definitely but I'm not I'm around indefinitely. Like I'm not always around, and it's just I want to help more and I try to, but it's already his thing anyway.
Right,
Everyone to
right.
show up. He's got friends that do certain things now, and got a buddy that provides the tent and guy that brings the lights. And
Did you get a horse to play there?
we have.
Really?
Yep, we played there one year. We played a couple Tesseract covers.
Which ones?
April, a couple Concealing Fate. It was back when they only had that
Oh, when
first
they
record.
only had one out or whatever.
Yeah, it was like 2012 or maybe 13. I can never remember years.
Yeah.
And Aaron played guitar and Josh played bass, and I made backing tracks for like some other guitar layers and stuff. And just the
Cool.
three of us played instrumentally, and it was actually awesome. Yeah, we played 3 or 4 songs. Yeah, it was a while ago though.
Sounds really awesome. I was gonna ask like if you guys played some of Aura's crushing material for like this
Yeah,
this
and
little
that's-
street
and that's
this
tough, too.
block
Like,
party.
Obviously, I have family that's not super into metal or
Yeah.
aggressive music in general, and it's like, oh, what's that? That screaming stuff or whatever.
Screamo.
And
That's
and you get
screamo.
it, you get it, and it's just one of those things that, like, hopefully they understand that I'm not trying to force it upon them. Like,
Right,
I
right.
definitely have no like agenda or anything like that, and that's one of the reasons why it's nice that I have the interval side of things, just so that my family can appreciate basically the Aura side of things for me, from my perspective, for what I do on the drums, or at least like the type of thing that I do on the drums. They get to enjoy it a little bit more in an open sense, where they can concentrate more on what I'm doing,
Right.
and see a little bit more.
That's an interesting
more
aspect. I
excitement.
guess if like each role is like maybe broken down, it might be more digestible to people who haven't really come across music like that before, you know?
Totally. I mean, it's already overwhelming if you're not used to complex rhythms and things
Yeah.
like
Oh,
that.
for
So
sure.
There's no faulting anyone for that kind of thing.
No, not
People
at all.
just
not
like
at all.
what they like. That's
Yeah.
the best part about music.
Sure.
Yep.
So, from a young age, clearly you were kind of pushed towards music. Was there like a first instrument you picked up?
That's the thing. I was never pushed towards it. In fact, I pushed my parents. Like I was
Okay.
always asking for a drum set. Basically, I think I was about 3 years old, and I don't remember. Obviously, I don't remember if it was before or after, but it was sometime around. There's 2 things that happened. The first thing was my dad's band would come, and they actually played at Center in the Square one time. Like
Cool.
his band, when they used to play with this other guy who was the singer and acoustic guitar player. Anyway, so they were rehearsing for something, and the drummer brought his drums, and I came down and just stared and watched him set his drums up, watched him play the whole time. He's just Andy McPherson is his name. He's actually I think he's still a teacher at St. Mary's. He's been there for years and years and years. Lives in Kitchener. Just incredible hands, like the softest hands, but they're playing rock music. But he's like a jazz drummer. I think he's a Humber guy. So he was my first like jaw drop. But I was 3, and like, I never really needed any convincing that was an interesting thing to me. And then within a few months, I think it was Christmas, or my birthday, my grandparents went out and got me a tiny little plastic drum kit. And yeah, it was 3 or 4, and I ran laps around the house. Like I was like ecstatic, and it broke within a week because I played it nonstop, right? And then I was begging for a drum kit nonstop until I was about 12 years old when I got a kit. My sister and I got a kit for Christmas for my parents. Yeah, and that was it.
Cool.
3 months into that, I was like, well, I know what I'm doing.
So you picked it up really quickly then?
Yeah, jeez.
I didn't I didn't get good super fast necessarily. Like I played it all the time, and that contributed to me.
There was just like this
getting a
innate like
handle on it
love for
quicker.
it.
Yeah, like I definitely had an inclination. Obviously coordination is not in the best position, but I skipped one thing because when I was, I think around 6 or so, my parents were like, okay, we'll give you a lesson or two, a few lessons. So I went to Andy's house, my dad's drummer, and he taught me a couple things. One thing being the paradiddle, probably the only thing I remembered. And then so I had that for 6 years, and then I had like a little electronic kit when I was, or like a little pad thing, Yamaha pad thing when I was maybe 10 or 11. played in the school talent show, and then they were like, okay, I think he's actually gonna maybe stick to it. There was no question in my mind I was gonna stick to it. I was already, but 3 months into having a drum kit, I was like, I remember like I played for a couple hours one day, and then I just stopped and like yeah, this is it. Like this is, I don't have a need to interest myself in anything else. Like, because all my friends were getting into, I was playing hockey all the time, and I loved it. Still love hockey, but I don't play it that much. The skiing and snowboarding and just all kinds of things. My friends were all finding their interest in that world, but I noticed there was part of drums that made sense more to me, and there was an inkling in me that understood that I could make something of it in a career sense. And I also knew it was difficult from the get-go. Everyone loved telling me that it was going to be impossible. Like, oh, it was like people's
Isn't
favorite
that
thing. Like, what do you want to do when you grow up?
Yeah.
Play drums. Like, well, it's going to be really hard. Like, listen, bitch, I know. Like, like I was prepared. I was ready for it.
Did that ever diminish you at all when somebody would mention to you that it's going to be an impossible feat, or were you just like, nah, I'm gonna do it, like I'm gonna do whatever it takes kind of thing?
Because other people did it.
Right.
Like, and that's the thing. I think that like any of that negative talk, it's weird to me that people spend a lot of time worrying about what you can't do, because like if it's been done, then now what are you gonna say? Like, it's been done.
Yeah.
Of course I'm gonna bring it to hockey just for 1 sec, because Wayne Gretzky, highest scorer in the world, no one's gonna pass him in goals ever. Alex Ovechkin right now is only a couple seasons away from maybe beating him, but it's like everyone, I'm sure, told him like, at least you're not going to be the great one. Like, you're not going to be the great one. He's the great 8, and he's so close to matching. It's plausible, at least at this point. And that's just one of those things where it's like, people can't tell you what you can't do.
Yeah. Do you think that kind of talk comes from people who have sort of like quit out on their dream,
I mean, yeah, I think that is just a common thing, because a lot of people sort of, they succumb to the negative aspects of it. And I don't know, there's balance, there's sacrifice, there's all kinds of different things you got to take into account, and maybe those things don't work for that person ultimately.
Sure.
And I think a lot of those people just get the impression that their experience was the general experience, but everyone's experience is different. So I don't know, and it's easy to catch yourself like just listening to what someone says and taking their opinion as your personal truth at this point. But
Yeah.
it's like, if you believe in something, or if you believe that you can do something, or if you want to do something, then I don't really understand listening to people that
At least to
just
me,
think
it's like
otherwise.
whenever I hear somebody and they're like, yeah, don't follow your dream, like don't even take a crack at it, I'm like, are
Okay.
you out of your mind?
Yeah,
Like,
it's kinda-
I mean,
how are you
I
going
don't
to
think
say
it-
that
see,
to
the thing is,
anybody?
I don't think it comes from like them trying to be too negative, but it's more or less like it is a negative thing to like absorb, because you can take it in stride or let it, like pick you back up, but at the
Mhm.
same time, I feel like a lot of people who do that and maybe went to go chase their dreams, like had something happen, like I really
Like they were bad at the drums?
no.
Yeah, or like they went into debt, and like,
or like
yeah,
they
or
started
like
a
their
family or
girlf-
something
yeah,
like
or-
that, and
yeah.
it's like those things is like, those things kind of like curbed their lifestyle, so they're almost like it's almost like they reflect on like what they had, and they're like, it wasn't as great because they didn't get to that like goal point, so they
yeah.
kind of like, it's not that great, like don't, because like I did that, they'll be like, well, I was a band
I feel
when
like
was
that's kind of
16,
sad
and
though.
it's,
Like, do you not feel like they pivoted like that same kind of excited energy? Like, say they're pursuing music and they think that's what they're gonna do. They have a kid. Do you not feel like that kid now should be like their number one priority, and like this is like their superstar,
For
whatever?
For sure. No, definitely.
I feel like the type of person who's coming and telling you not to follow your dream, whatever curbed like their dream, maybe they don't look at it like it's like this big I don't know.
maybe because they had a passion
Seems
for
kinda
it
sad
once
to
and
me.
then now they don't anymore, is that dream to them seems lackluster.
Right.
Maybe, I don't know.
well,
yeah.
it's,
It
I
could be
think-
many.
Maybe it's because they're so far away from like what that was at one point in time.
They
I don't know.
even
I
see
feel
it
like
as, like, a
we
big
could
deal or-
philosophize about this
Yeah.
all
Yeah,
day.
yeah. Well, I don't know. I think it's interesting because like it's what's the worst that can happen? You experience happiness for a bit. You have some
Right.
nice memories. You
Yeah.
meet some
Yeah.
people. You make friendships. I just don't understand the downside to trying something that you're pretty sure is gonna make you happy right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
I get making sure that you're being aware of the future and just staying on top of your own life in that sense, and I get that you can cause issues if you're just living in the now. You're not thinking about anything in the future. But yeah, like if you're sure it's gonna at least give you an inkling of happiness, I don't really know if you can even put a dollar value on that.
Yeah,
Like,
for
you
sure.
know,
for
if
sure.
it costs you money because you're pouring stuff into it, but it's interesting to you. Like, think about the people that buy cars just because they like the car. Like,
Yeah.
think about how
Yeah.
much money that is, and
Yeah.
it's just for something that they like.
Yeah, it's not. No one's being like, you
ridiculous.
should probably stop buying cars.
Yeah, right. There's
No one's-
that's the weird thing too, though. There's some things in society where people look at it and they're like, yeah, throw caution to the wind and just do your thing. But then they look at like, oh, you're in a band, like
I think it's because it's a
you
career.
guys should get rational,
Yeah, because
But
they
the-
see the car thing and they're like, "Oh, that guy must have a lot of money
It's
from
like a
job
material
to
thing,
spend on
too,
this
that they
thing."
can
But then they
see.
see like a music career and they're like, "Oh, this is like their only source of income." And then they think about all the future things that come with that, and then the whole like lifestyle of like being in maybe a full-time touring band, or however you pursue to have a full-time music career. And yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. I don't know how we got all the way here.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Um,
it's just, yeah, I guess it's just curbing that negativity and trying to make, just trying to at least like express whatever you want to express and not feel like the opinions of other people's experiences should make you feel like your experience will be any different or
Right.
the same.
Yeah.
or just because everyone's just a different human being experiencing or wanting different things anyway. So I don't know. That's one of the reasons why I think I listened to myself, I trusted that sort of that desire to pursue the drums in a very like just dedicated form. Like I knew that there was gonna be a lot of shit that I didn't want to have to practice and play, and like just rudiments and just all kinds of stuff. But I knew that was necessary.
Right. So
So that
you kind of
was-
saw like a path that you had to take to
Yeah, and-
make this thing happen.
And therefore, those things started becoming enjoyable to me. In fact,
Sure.
you can kind of find the joy in almost anything. And I find like when I work on rudiments and stuff like that, and any of that sort of quote unquote boring stuff where it's just repetition, but you're not really challenging yourself, you're just doing it for the sake of the motions. That stuff is really helpful. And for me, it's boring, so I just use it to either think about things or meditate, kind of thing, or like just kind of put myself in a different mindset where I'm not, like really going balls to the wall and trying to reinvent myself completely now.
Right.
learn
I
some
mean,
new-
it's like similar to going to like the gym or like you're studying for a test or whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
you kind of have to find these little tricks to enjoying it. Like the act itself might not be that great, but if you can put your mind in like a different headspace while you're doing it,
Mhm.
then suddenly it's totally fine and something that you could do every day,
Yeah.
Cool. So we did Chasing Amy. We did your growing up.
Like you started there.
Well, where else would we start?
That's a good place to start.
Yeah, I think so.
mean, yeah.
Chronologically, of course.
Do you have something earlier that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, is there
Well, my
any
first band was-
super obscure stuff?
Yeah, actually, and this is something I guess you wouldn't have found on the internet. My first band was called the Vas Deferens,
Cool.
which is I don't know if any of you are familiar with biology, but it's the part of the male genitalia that carries the semen from the testicles to the, I think, it's that area.
What was the name
Yes,
again?
of course.
The Vas Deferens.
Okay.
DEFERNS, I think.
How old were you when you chose this name?
I didn't choose it. It was the guitar player, and actually it was called the bass player called me last night. He's my dad's bass player's son. So that's the reason why I was in that first band. I had just joined high school, St. Benny's, as I had mentioned before, St. Benedict's in Cambridge, and they went there. I just joined, but I'd known Dave for a while, and he was like, "Hey, I got this band thing," and the drummer left. It's always the same story.
Yeah.
And I come out and jam, and I was 13 years old, and it was like punk beats, and I was like, and the first thing, so this is actually pretty important for me at least, is that Joe, the guitar player, the guy that named it, he was just in health class. He was like, "Oh, that would be a great band name." Later on, we changed it. My dad kept asking us to change it. He was like, "Well, if you want to be
that's
professional,
hilarious.
and like you want to get taken seriously," but we didn't care. We're kids. And then we changed it to Mad Transit, and we actually have shirts and stuff like that.
Mad.
I think we released like a EP thing like that, or no, a full length album like that. But the first thing Joe said
I
to
feel
me,
like I stumbled
Mad
across that
Transit?
somehow. That
Yeah,
sounds
that
so
just sounds-
familiar.
I think
Yeah.
that's on MySpace or something like that. Still.
Okay,
Or
okay.
Reverb Nation or one of those things.
Reverb, pure volume.
Yeah, Pure Volume actually is maybe the most likely if that site still exists.
Oh, it
Interesting.
does.
Okay.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I just gonna
This
s-
doesn't
No,
look
I don't
right,
think
Devin.
that's them.
Oh, that's totally. Yo, there's you, Nathan, right there.
Yeah, that's. Oh,
Damn,
I'm sure
dude.
there's another band called that. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah. Anyway, I remember the first thing that Joe said to me in the first jam that we ever had. I played some punk beats, and he was like, "All right, listen, I'm gonna tell you, basically just one thing, and that's it. However hard you're playing, play harder than that, and however loud you're playing, or did you say loud? At least hitting harder. It was always about hitting harder. However hard you're hitting, hit harder than that, and that was the rule basically in that band. And that's not necessarily the best advice. Like from if a teacher, like a drum teacher, gave you that would be terrible advice from a drum teacher.
Right.
But
Yeah.
from someone that expected a certain level or a certain sound from the drums, explained that to me. He just basically said that's what I'm looking for from you. That carved everything for me because I was like, all right, I got to
Whoa.
slam these things. So I learned how to hit a rim shot every time without missing it and without like struggling to like without hitting the rim by itself or any of that stuff. And that was a big focus for me early on. And I remember I ripped open the skin of my finger at a show, a couple years later, and we had a couple songs left or something, and I was like, I can't play anymore. I'm like, I yelled at him. I was like,
I
that's
got a
it, we're
boo-boo.
done. Like and it was like the most painful thing, and I've experienced it a couple times since, but I've got things to put on it. But back then it was nothing, and it was like 10 layers of skin or something off, and the
Jesus.
stick is just right. I'm
Jeez.
hitting as hard as I can. That's what I've always done at that point. And I'm like, I can't play anymore. He looks back at me and goes, this is fucking punk rock, man. And he goes, all right, we got 4 more songs left. And so we added more songs to the set list. And we played.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
he
man,
just put you
he's
through
like,
the
oh,
meat
he's like,
grinder.
He's like, get some duct tape. So I duct taped it, played the rest of the show. And that was just one of those things that sort of, again, from drum teacher, that would be terrible advice because you want to obviously learn how to relax and have better technique and more control over what you're doing. But it was the perspective of the listener he was getting across, saying,
Sure.
this is what we need. This is what we expect from the drummer in this music style.
I feel like not only that, but for a young musician to go past a threshold of power that they're comfortable with, you're going to start to learn a lot of things about not only like different play styles and how your kit's functioning, but your own body, right?
Yeah. Well, it feels totally different to like if you play one groove like this and then you play the same groove but hitting like 3 or 4 times harder as far as velocity is concerned, it doesn't feel like the same thing. It doesn't.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why I think spending so much time on all that stuff early on was so important for me, but it also hindered me in so many ways because I could never play anything quietly.
Right.
It was terrible playing quiet. In fact, that was my dad's biggest complaint. He's like, what's stopping you from playing quiet? Basically, it was just sort of challenging me in that sense. And he was totally right. I just never been in a scenario where that was the right thing for the music. So I was only in bands where it was like hit as hard as you can, and I was doing that as best as I could, and I think I did a decent job for that age doing what I was doing because it was
Yeah,
as
your hands
simplistic
are
as it
ripping
get.
open. You're
Yeah.
clearly doing
Exactly.
something
Doing
right.
the right thing, you know?
You earned it.
Getting calluses and blisters. But then I started playing with a cover band. This is, I guess, we're maybe jumping into the future, but post Aura or around the time that I joined Aura, started playing with a cover band. Tiny little bars and clubs and places like that. You don't get to play drums.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But you still have to get the listener and the person on the dance floor still wants to feel like it's a rock song.
Right.
Or still get some movement in there. So you still have to understand the importance of dynamics and feel and just all these things, but you don't get to hit hard. So it was very limiting in that sense, but it taught me so much because I really learned what I was trying to get across in a completely different dynamic setting, which just opened the door up to everything, and thus Auras became a perfect playing ground for all that material.
Sure.
All those tools that I'd come across and built. I
Yeah,
guess,
that's
you know?
really cool. And
Discovered, I guess.
I was listening to Josh talk about some of the work you guys have been doing for the new record,
Mhm.
and clearly you get to continue in that playing ground. Like he made
Yeah.
it sound like the sound is changing quite drastically, like a lot more softer
Yeah.
sections, more breathable,
More
lots of
cleans,
synth work,
maybe?
more cleans.
Yeah, there's tons of cleans. And that I
Sick.
will say this about That's the one thing I think. I don't know if people. Okay, so I mentioned the whole curveball with me being a pop punk drummer before getting into the metal, and people were like, "What? What's going on? That's crazy." And that was just a surprise. We wanted to kind of like just take advantage of as best we could, which wasn't really too much. And now we're in the position where people don't realize that Josh is a. I mean, I'm in his band, but Josh is a fucking really good singer. Like he's got a crazy set of pipes. He just needed the technique behind the breathing, control of his voice, and like some I don't really know. He could probably go into detail more about it, but he basically just decided, okay, well, I've got the tools. I just need to learn how to use them, and so he started getting lessons from our good friend Mike Zemeski, who actually used to be in Intervals. Funny enough. And Mike taught him, some of the major things that he would just have to focus on. And he just practiced for probably a year, and then there was no set plan to have more singing or anything. But it was like we had these demos. We have a lot more sort of emotion and melody going on. I don't think we've done anything less rhythmically. I don't think if you counted the notes on Helio Spectrum and if you're getting nerdy and you count the notes on both albums, you'll probably get the same note count.
Right.
You might even get more this time.
Okay.
I don't know. But there's like I guess he stated, there's a lot more open air for just an additional melody.
Right,
and,
right.
We've
a little
always
more
used,
atmosphere.
yeah,
kind of vibe.
and we've always used the guitar or like a simple lead to sort of present that melody. But so many things just called for clean vocals. So
Sure.
We just thought, why not?
Yeah, I heard he ran into kind of an interesting situation too, where during tracking, he was starting to lose his voice.
Actually, I just
and
got there
wasn't able to add more like deep screams to it.
Yeah.
So
he couldn't do any screams.
They kind of had to go. All
I
right,
remember
well the cleans are gonna have to fly.
I remember that I remember that like vividly because that was the day that I was starting to set up and start tracking drums. He was there before I was there. Eric was the last one to come in. And we all just kind of took turns because it was Ottawa and we just went up by ourselves. Aaron was the only constant there that was there the whole time because he's basically the overseer of how the music ends up coming out. And yeah, Josh was like, yeah, just got to finish some harmonies, whatever, and then you can go in and get set up and do all that stuff. And then I was outside just hanging. It was a beautiful day. It was June. I was like, I think I was on the phone, and then he knocks on the thing and he was like, all right, you're up. And I was like, you finish all your screams in 10 minutes? Like, that's not possible. He's like, oh, I couldn't do it. Like, no. What do you mean? Like, but they're they're perfect for the right spots. And in my head, I'm like, oh my god,
Right.
And then he's like, no, don't worry, Eric's gonna do it. It's fine. And then Eric did it, and I was like, oh yeah, it's probably better that Eric did it because it's a little bit more like controlled and centered that way. I mean, I think it would have worked fine either way. But what I originally thought was a detriment, I was like, no, your voice. He got all the singing done, and that's honestly all that really matters because that's the only thing he's gonna. I think he mentioned this too, that he's not gonna want to scream live anyway if he's gonna sing this much.
Yeah.
And play guitar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And 9. So I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but 9 of the 10 songs have like a chorus or the same chorus twice.
Okay.
Like there's stuff going on that we haven't really explored too much with the past. So
Cool.
he's got a lot more to do, and why kill the guy? Like he's
Yeah. I think he was
already rocks
specifically
out so
saying
hard.
like the with a lot of previous material, it was kind of like you're just doing a part and then the next part and then the next part and then the next part, where this has like a little bit more refrain and repetition to it, which lends itself a little bit more to it being digestible, I suppose.
That's exactly what I think ultimately realized. Like that's sort of where we picked the 10 songs we picked. I guess we could have gone outside. There was a couple songs we didn't use on the record, but
yeah,
that would have been
I think
maybe
Josh
more,
had said you guys were up at like 14
I
songs.
can't remember what
and
it was.
You narrowed it down.
But there were some more digestible things that were like, this isn't us though,
Right.
necessarily.
You had to find like a middle ground
yeah,
between
we didn't
them.
want to go there,
Right,
because
right.
because I don't know, like we don't really care. Like we're really just trying to do stuff that we would want to listen to. Like
Sure,
we want another
definitely.
band to maybe do this stuff, just because it's doable, and with the world of MIDI drums and writing capabilities, you can really dive in before you actually have to go about learning the parts. Like
Right.
at least for me, it makes the exploration of creativity so much more enjoyable, because you can really and Josh, like he'll with his initial demos and stuff, he'll have drum ideas, and I'm like, why the hell would he put a snare there? That's the weirdest spot. Then I hear it like 50 times, and you're like, okay, I need to keep that snare. That's perfect.
Yeah.
For some reason, it just makes sense. If I take it out, it doesn't work. And maybe that's just a condition of listening to things over and over again. And I'm sure you guys get through this all the time, where it's like, is this too weird, or is this not weird enough? And I think we spent too much time worrying about that stuff before, whereas now it's more about like what the whole song feels like when you're done listening to it, like, and the fact that
That's a good way of
hopefully
putting
you
it.
listen to the whole thing.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of music where I don't really listen to tons of music much these days either, but there's most of the time I just kind of get into a certain part, and if I'm like, all right, I've heard this part a second time, I'll just move on to something else. Unless there's
It's funny
like,
that
a
you
moment
mentioned that.
I'm
There's
waiting
been
for.
a couple people, specifically just like this year and last year, that I've heard taking like some of their favorite songs and then like chunking out parts that they felt like they didn't need to listen to a second time, but there was parts that they enjoyed a lot, and like making their own like custom remixed mixtapes of
Who
like
are these
albums and
people?
stuff.
I've never heard of this. yeah.
Ethan
Yeah.
from
Name
like
names.
Ethan from H3 does this with his music. Like
Oh Jesus.
yeah, and this other
With-
YouTuber
with his own
Donkey.
music.
Not his own music,
Oh,
but
okay.
like music that he enjoys listening to.
Right.
That's
He'll
so
be like,
strange.
yeah, it's so bizarre.
I mean, I kind of
I
part
see
of
where
me
he's
gets
coming
it,
from,
but I mean,
then
like-
another part of me is
But
just
imagine,
like that's like a crazy like nth degree.
Yeah,
of-
it's funny though, because I part of me, and this just goes back to my dear old father. Part of me wanted to put together a version of the Auras record with all the screaming cut out, or like an instrumental version. At least I gave him that for sure. But I wanted him to enjoy the vocals,
Right.
at least the clean vocals. So like just it was at least a thought that passed my mind. I was like, it'd be funny if I went through and like.
that would be really interesting to hear
Kind
too.
of Eric, unfortunately, but yeah, I don't know, but that's not something that's.
But whole parts like of the
Right,
song
yeah.
is just so bizarre. Like imagine
Yeah,
going to
that's-
somebody's house and they're like,
that's a
"Hey man,
strange-
really big fan of your guys' music. Like I really like that one song. But I kind of made my own version of it. I kind of
Yeah.
cut out that one
Took the
part, and you're
bridge.
like,
I took out
"That's
that
my favorite
one,
part.
dude."
That's the part where I do the most stuff."
Right,
And you're
yeah.
like,
That's you know what, that's a great point. I think most of us as musicians think about this stuff, but or get kind of lost in this and don't think about it, I guess. But there's a lot of parts where I'm like, this is a wicked part, and the guys are like, that's a terrible part, and vice versa. It happens, and I'm like, why are we having this discord? But at the same time, when you look at the situations, like each specific situation, it's almost always because I'm playing something that doesn't necessarily have to sound cool, but is fun for me to play. And for them, it's like, it's easier enough or whatever. It's not like a really, really hard riff, or I don't know. There's little levels of things that you're really personal about musically, and you forget to step back and go, is this right for the song?
Right.
And that's the
Yep.
thing I think we spent the most time this time doing, like going, okay, hold on. Like, I know we think it's cool, but is it actually cool? Or is it actually,
Yeah.
does it actually work? And taking time between editing sessions or writing sessions and stuff like that, and going to Michigan. We went to Michigan this time to work with Nick Sampson on some pre-pro. a little
Yeah,
bit, which
Nick
was-
Sampson.
That was a huge, that was a-
responsible for things like Born of
oh, man,
Osiris,
this era.
Mice and Men,
He did the last
All the
Miss May I
hits.
record.
Polyphia, I believe.
Oh,
all
yeah,
the
tons of Polyphia
classics.
stuff. I Am Abomination is actually how I got into him because of his band.
Right. Cool.
In 2008, or when Jaw Dropper came out, and I actually met him last year at NAMM for the first time. I think he was with Joey Sturgis and a couple other people, and we had a little chat. We got like hot dogs or something like that, and I was just like, man, like, maybe I'll see you, because he's in Michigan, and I'm like, I'm only a couple hours from you, so maybe I'll see you at some point in the future. And then the conversations came up. We were in the middle of writing with the Aura stuff. This is 3 or 4 months later. Sorry, 2 months later. Not even that long. And Carl, our rep at E1, he's been amazing for us. He's been like helping manage us at this point because we don't have management right now. He's like, I think you guys should maybe go in and just work on just pre-pro with someone. And pre-pro for lots of bands, like rock bands and stuff, is you got demos and you go in and you record every song from start to finish on live off the floor or even in pieces or whatever, but just roughly. You can't do that with us. That would take weeks, and that's just a waste of time. We're not going to redo all this stuff. So we go in with all of our pre-pro that's already done. I have everything stem separated. Things are sectioned out so we can cut things out and rework parts and whatever. We only have one song that we were like, don't really know arrangement of this. I don't really know how it should go. But everything else, we were pretty set in. And we got there, and, you know, he had ideas for a couple things. And there's a lot of parts where he was like, I don't think that this needs anything. And often those were parts that we had already stepped back and been like, okay,
You
we feel
guys
confident.
did that kind of work on
Yeah,
already?
so it was a bit of, but there were lots of parts where we were like, okay, now we just don't know. We got lost in our own thoughts. Like, I like the drum part or whatever the case is. And Nick was just the one that was objectively listening to it for the first time as a listener, going, you know, that's distracting or that's empty or any of those things. And 2 songs we didn't have clean vocals for. He was like, yeah, here's a couple. Like, we basically went through ideas together all in the room, and he was on a MIDI keyboard, and we were just like, let's maybe move that one. Oh, maybe not that one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, maybe here. All right, now that one. Josh, try to sing that. Oh, maybe we should go to that one. So all as a group, trial and erroring things, because we you know, care so intensely about all the little tiny details, but we forget about the big picture stuff, and that's where he could really focus in on.
That's really cool. So, about how long have you guys been working on this new material? Like, it's been like 3 years since the last record.
Yeah, September 2016, Hilo Spectrum came out. I think that's right.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me.
So yeah, actually, well, we started. So in the fall, I was. Is that right? Am I thinking of the right thing?
Yes.
Yeah, the fall of 2017, I was in Europe with Intervals, and Josh sent over 2 or 3 rough demos of like 2 minutes or something like that, and I think all 3 of those made it on in some way, shape, or form. Those became songs, and then sometime after that, we had the run North America with Jason Richardson and Nick Johnson, and I think in that one he had sent me 1 or 2. And then I came home after that, and Josh just came over, and we just started kind of pushing stuff out. Like, he had all these different demo ideas, and yeah, the one thing he was focusing on was basically just working on synth sounds and just trying to be creative in that sense, just for himself, and then
Cool.
kind of using that to, I guess, spark creativity or whatever he meant to do, or didn't
Expand
mean
his
to
palette
do,
a
it still
bit.
worked. Yeah, like whatever path he took, I'm glad he took it, because he could sort of just push stuff aside, not worry about it, and then he and I could sit there and start arranging things, and you know, we were all kind of in the conversation at that point. And that didn't really start until probably middle of March, and by the end of April, we were like, I think early May we went to Michigan.
Cool.
So which
Pretty
is like
quick process.
It was
Yeah.
record fast, like insanely record fast. I mean, it obviously helps that there are large chunks of ideas that Josh has kind of gotten this bit of a back catalog that he's been sort of putting together for the past few months. But even when that started to when we had the record masters in our hands, it's fastest we've ever done it. And it's the most effective way we've ever done it, I think.
Yeah, we've talked on here before about kind of getting things done in that quick time span.
Yeah, giving yourself a timeline.
Yeah,
or like a deadline.
we feel like if you let it I won't speak for these two, but I feel like if you let the process drag on too long, there's going to be material that you were working on in the beginning that you might not even like anymore, or it sounds dated to your ears, like 6, 7, 8, 9, blah blah blah, etc. months down the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you can, and I'm not saying you have to make a record like this. Like, you make a record any way you want.
Exactly.
But I've listened to a lot of records the past few years that have been like started and finished within a several month period, like a fairly short span of time, and they're like so concise and like kick ass.
But are they using actual instruments, or are they just sampling stuff?
Both?
Yeah.
Well, actually, so you guys like Big Rec? You like
Yeah.
Ian Thornley? I mean, he's the man. I just saw, I think yesterday or something, a video came out, and their new song, Locomotive.
Okay.
If you haven't heard it yet, listen to the new Big Rec single. Holy shit, it is so good. He just nails it every time. And it was just like a minute video on YouTube. It's like some of it behind the scenes or writing it or whatever. And he said something like he said 240 or 320 songs. Like,
Holy shit.
yeah, dude, like for
That's
real.
fucking crazy.
Like
kinda wild.
at least ideas and whatever. Probably
but still
sound clips.
3.
in the hundreds, like
Yeah.
literal hundreds. It wasn't 100 and something. It was 200 and something or 300 and something, maybe 400
That's
and something. I
wild.
don't know. But yeah, but it just kind of made me just like, that would take us our whole lives plus more than that. Like, it would take so long to get all that stuff sorted out. And that's one of the other things behind the way you kind of have to go about things with progressive metal and stuff like that. You kind of just have to commit at a certain point.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
you just have to, because what are you gonna do? Right? Like I said,
Toil away
100
forever
songs,
and
It's too
ever.
50
easy to
songs, and
overthink it.
yeah.
It's too easy to overthink it because you're putting so much into such little amount of time that
Yep.
you can just, get away with like a little section rather than like, it's easy to get lost in the part and
Yeah.
Yeah,
from
yeah.
the
You
song.
sit there and mess around
you know,
with two
you
bars
start
over
writing,
and over and over.
Yeah,
and
you just
over.
start writing for the part and not the song, I
Yeah,
guess,
sure.
if that makes
Well,
sense.
and you got to remember that people like Kim Mitchell, for example, didn't want to have patio lanterns on the album, and they were like, "You got to do it." I can't remember where the convincing ended up happening. He was like, "Fuck, fine, whatever." Put it on the record. #1 single he's ever had.
Smash
Did
hit.
he tell you that
easily the-
personally when you were?
Yeah.
No, actually, no. But there was a funny thing where someone drove by in a car and they were playing "Go for Soda," but you could barely hear it, and he was like, "I think that's the soda bell." Ding, ding, ding. And it was
That's
like
so
the guy
funny.
gets closer, and we're
That's
like,
so
he
funny.
knows the frequency of that of
That's
the ride
funny.
symbol that Paul DeLong used. I think
That's
it's Paul
crazy. Yeah. So how was that whole thing?
How did
with,
that even happen?
Yeah,
sorry
like
for segueing into my own, but
No,
No,
that's
you're
perfect.
taking us right
yeah.
along the
that's a
planned
specific-
path.
But that's a specific example of I just want to touch on that last point
yeah, for
of
sure.
why you just don't want to shy away from the stuff that that's too different or whatever, because having a little bit of that variety, I think, can sometimes just make can turn a somewhat monotonous sounding record or book or whatever, like whatever type of entertainment, like a movie, if you think of it that way, like you can, if it's kind of monotonous and sort of predictable in a lot of ways, but then there is something that you never really saw coming, then that's a memorable
Sure,
thing, and you're
sure.
gonna remember that movie for that moment or the album. So I just think a lot of people end up dismissing a lot of those things and those songs like Patio Lanterns and all that. But yeah, that experience was really good for me because it was obviously a huge resume piece, but
yeah.
it was also
No
my
kidding.
dad got me. My dad, I grew up on Max Webster. My dad is huge into that because that's kind of his prog rock thing. It was Yes. He took me to see a Yes show when I was 11, right before I got that first kid I ever had, and I was like, bam, like this is totally it. And yeah, the Max Webster thing, we had a hockey compilation album that we all get to pick one song. All my friends, is it 2001 or 2000? All my friends picked Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, all this different stuff that was like a Kid Rock, a couple songs, and I picked Check by Max Webster. Not even a single they had, like just the first song on the record. I loved it. I'd always rock out to it, and yeah, that was stuff I played on the drums and stuff as a kid. So that when I had met his drummer at the time.
Wait. What did the other kids think of your pick?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Oh, they didn't know. There was a
Were they,
couple.
were they just like what, or were they like?
There
"This
was
is
one Tom
cool"?
Cochran song, like the hockey song. There was a hockey one, Big League, I think it was, and there was a couple old ones, like it's not from Tom Connor.
Okay, so you
But
weren't
mine-
completely like
mine
out
was
in left
the
field.
most out there, but I was a music guy,
Right.
Like, so I never, I don't know, in the
Oh,
hockey
that's
dressing
just
room-
Nathan's song.
Well, in the dressing room, I would always talk to the other musicians, like the other people that were like, remember that band Kingdoms?
Mhm.
Chuck Brooker.
Mhm.
Chuck Brooker and I, the guitar player who wrote, I think most of those songs. I think he's the primary writer for a lot of. I could be wrong. I love all those guys to death. Chuck and I played hockey together when we were like 10 or 11, and we just talked about music and stuff. Maybe even younger than that. And there's another guy. Geez, I can't remember everyone, but there's a couple guys that I played hockey with, and like way back in the day, and seen at shows, played shows with, all kinds of stuff. So that was kind of my crew a little bit more back then. I would spend a little bit more
Right.
concentration on that. That was just such a nerd in that sense. But yeah, that was
Cool.
just a thing,
So we're coming up on an hour. We usually do a little break here.
Oh, right on.
You guys want to jump back into the Kim Mitchell as soon as we're back?
Absolutely.
Yup.
dude.
Hey, thanks, Devin. I mean, Biff Wellington.
Well, you learn a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty informational. Did you enjoy the segment?
That fruit fly one was real good.
Yeah. Informative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Educational.
Yeah.
All right, do you
Real
guys-
meeting of the minds.
Yeah, exactly, if that's what you want to call it. Do you guys want to pick up where we left off?
Yeah.
Kim Mitchell.
Kim Mitchell.
Jinx.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I guess I should mention how that whole thing came about. Because I actually okay. Sorry, these memories are coming back because it all kind of is like I'm sort of the poster boy for why you should meet as many people as you can, just like get to know people, because everything in my life seems to be like multi-stemmed in many ways, and this is one of those examples where uh the current rhythm guitar player for Intervals, Sam Jacobs, he is from Winnipeg, and this is like before this is gonna be 2013 or something. He knows the drummer of Kim Mitchel because his dad, who's a bass player, ridiculous bass player, played for Streetheart. Kenny uh-oh. Anyway, my brain wanted me to say Kenny Rogers, and that would have been terrible. So Sam's dad used to play with Suds back in the day, Chris Sutherland, who was playing for Kim, and Chris was putting together this like online. He was just kind of prelimming this online drum lesson website thing that was going to be sort of like Drumeo, and there's other things like that. And actually, he just got super busy with it, so it never ended up kind of coming to fruition. But I ended up meeting up with him a few times in Mississauga just to be like his kind of prog metal guy on the channel, because he had a guy that was doing rock stuff, a couple other guys. Andrew McKinney, who was playing for Structures at the time, he was another guy that was coming around and doing some lessons as well. So it was just kind of a community of drummers, and Chris is a really, really great guy. We got along really well right off the bat, and fast forward to probably I guess March or April in 2014. Oars is in the studio. We're at Sundown in Guelph recording with
Jordan.
We're working on Crestfallen actually, and I just get a phone call, and I'm like, Chris Sutherland. I'm like, oh, cool. So I go outside, take the call, and he was like, I got a crazy proposition. Like, do you think you'd want to play some shows with Kim Mitchell? I was like, I don't even know what to say. Like, of course. Like, do you think I can? Like, that was really my first question. I'm like, do you think I can cut it? Like, and also, don't you have doesn't he have countless other guys that are in the industry that he knows and whatever? I feel like I'm a crapshoot. Like, he doesn't know me. It seems weird. But it was because Chris was working with some musical theater stuff, and he was to be able to sort of get that contract sorted out, he needed to be able to sub out some of his gigs. And it was just 4 gigs, I think, throughout part of that summer. Oh, sorry, he wasn't doing musical theater stuff. He was on tour with a band called the Roadhammers, a country band. And so, yeah, he was doing that, and it was just going to fill up most of his year. And Kim plays maybe 15, maybe 20 gigs a year, maybe less nowadays, but it's not super, super busy. So it's hard to commit full time to something like that for some people if they want to do multiple things. And Chris is doing tons of stuff all the time. So yeah, I got that call, and he sent me a list, and he sent me some videos of live versions that they were playing, and a couple weeks later I met up with him at the place we were doing the drum hang thing, the drum teaching thing. Kim showed up, brought an amp and his guitar, or there was an amp there, brought his guitar. We played like 2 songs of the 18, and he was like, all right, cool, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
That's
awesome.
awesome.
And I thought I was gonna like full rehearsal or something like that. Yeah, and the first show was in Oromocto, New Brunswick.
Interesting. That one really rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, Oromocto. It was a festival of some sort in June. I think it was in June. And actually, my dad's a big Kim Mitchell fan. And the funniest thing I think of the whole situation is that he gave me a couple of Max Webster records. He's like, can you get Kim to sign it? I'm like, Dad, no, I'm working. Like, this is my one. I get one chance to like make a good impression. I'm not gonna be like, yo, let's wait till the 4th show or something like that, or like maybe I'll have you meet him or something like that.
Right.
So, and my parents were planning on flying out there because my aunt and uncle actually live maybe an hour, so they live in New Brunswick as well. I can never remember if it's close to Moncton or Fredericton. I want to say Fredericton, Moncton. So anyway, they're maybe an hour from Oromocto. My parents are like, all right, well, let's go there. And the flights got canceled or something, so they drove their asses 13 or 14, maybe 16 hours.
I hope
something.
your dad brought the vacuum to get
Yeah.
started with a drive like that.
So yeah, they drove all the way, and my aunt and uncle came out, and they watched the show from side stage, and it was so funny because Patio Lanterns was the the final encore that we played, I think. And yeah, and I I get the call on stage and he starts playing the thing and I start doing the beginning of the song. I look over, my mom's there. She got her because this is that's a song that we kind of grew up listening to at the cottage on the Labor Day weekend, and that was just a thing that that was a song my parents always talked about. We got patio lanterns because of the song. We got lanterns to put in the patio area. It was just a whole thing, and
I feel
so
like
I looked
it
over.
like on top of it being a surreal experience for you, your parents must have just been like nuts over
Well,
this.
yeah, it was probably super. And I think I remember my mom saying this too after she looked at my dad and was like, "I can't tell. Is he doing a good job? Because you know, right? It looks like he's doing a good job, but I'm not a musician, so I don't know." So and my dad's like, "It looks like he's doing fine to me, whatever. He's playing the parts and so that's what I really worried about the most in that gig was just playing the parts really as close to Chris as I could because I know Chris is just what they were familiar with. But everyone's on their own and everyone is their own player. And Kim was always encouraging me to do my thing and stuff like that. But there's a couple things that I learned on that gig. And I think the most important thing, in a maturity sense, and I think this stuff never comes around if you're just playing gigs with anyone in the local scene at all, because even if you play with a player that's this good, no one has the expectation of needing you to be that good too.
Right.
So, excuse me. So Peter Fredette, who's the bass player and singer, he's the one that sings the high part in that song at Atlanta, and he's the one that does all the high harmonies. He's an incredible bass player. Plays the Moog sub octave keyboard, basically like an organ footboard, while playing bass sometimes or sometimes not, but doing that and singing. He's a multifaceted dude. And I remember he looked back at me, it was probably the second gig, and he looked back in soundcheck and he was like, we're playing a song called Rockland. And Rockland is probably was my sort of most anticipated song for one reason. It is kick, snare, kick, snare, kick. There's a crash once in the beginning of the song. There's a crash later in the song. There's no fills. It's just meat and potatoes in the pocket, just driving for it. And that's one of the hardest things to do for 5 minutes straight. So I was excited for that song because I just love being able to do that. I don't get many chances to, and that's a weird thing because it's something you dread doing when you're a kid. It's like playing the pentatonic scale up and down, up and down, up and down. No one gets joy out of that.
But does this come back to you practicing and finding joy in that practice? You're
exactly.
oh,
yeah.
Wait, I get to do this for Kim Mitchell now.
Well,
okay, yeah, whatever.
Well, yeah, and there's a song to go with it. So there's emotion to sort of bring to the table and all that stuff. And so the thing I learned the most in that gig was the dynamic factor of it. And I understand dynamics are important, and most of my body is paying attention to it and trying to be just at least to approach dynamics in a kind of a wholesale way where you're able to sort of reach all the little the pillars in between, the medium hits that are a little harder than the last medium hit, just all that stuff, and finding where each of those levels really do the most for you in that position. So I think it was we were 2 songs into soundcheck and we're playing Rockland, and like I said, meat and potatoes groove, so I'm just slamming it. It feels great to play this song, just real simple stuff. And Peter comes back and he's like, yo, in the verse, chill on the snare just a little bit. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that, because I'm just, when you hear it on the record too, the snare is hyped up and compressed, and it sounds all great. I think Paul DeLong's on that record too. And that was the first thing. The second thing was pull it back, the snare, just a tiny bit. And I'm like, what? It's on the hi-hat. And he's like, I know, but I want the snare to just to be a touch later than the hi-hat is, just ever so slightly. And it's not something it's something you really have to spend a lot of time just doing and focusing on in slow motion and speeding it up and all that stuff, which is always what I do when I learn and I get my muscle memory kind of focused on a certain part if it's difficult, especially. But that's one of those things that it's so subtle that the magic doesn't come into you being aware of that and then moving it and being the right spot. The magic comes into you being the right amount of relaxed with your backbeat hand, the right amount of relaxed with your downbeat with your kick. And I was like, is my kick fine? He's like, no, your kick's sitting nice. Snare just feels a little rushed. And I'm like, okay. that was just a big moment for me. And now this is one of those things where when I'm playing with a cover band, I get to focus on how I'm playing and not what I'm playing. And that's just another side of a lot of the lessons that, like, most of the lessons that I teach, like a lot of the students that I teach on the road, I focus a lot on separating what you're doing and how you're doing, so you can really just dive into one or the other, because it's just a combination of both of those things working in tandem. What you play on the instrument and how you're playing the instrument, those are the things that you have to have a perfect Venn. You don't even want a Venn diagram. You want it to just meld.
Right.
So that's one of those things that I'm thinking so much about what I'm playing, but it's a simple song that I have to now think about how I'm playing it. And when I'm playing with the cover band, I'm able to think about how I'm playing because I'm not playing much stuff. So having the outlet to work on how I'm playing in a simplistic drumming setting where I'm not doing very much stuff, and then bringing it into an environment like Auras where I have to put that into motion and automatically be relaxed with my backbeat, or just be, aware of the dynamics with my quarter note or any of that stuff that obviously sounds too technical now, but it's all roaming around in my mind when I'm playing the simple stuff, so that when it comes to adding tons of notes, I don't have to think about how I'm playing anymore. It's just a matter of putting the
Yeah,
things
it's
in the
a
right
really
spots.
cool perspective to kind of take on.
And that gig taught me that. Like, it was a really eye-opening experience because I never thought about moving. I'm seriously talking about like 3 milliseconds.
Right.
Like the ear can usually only catch like 20 milliseconds.
Yeah.
But it's the difference between the hi-hat and the snare that really. I mean, 3 was a little bit of an exaggeration, but you get what I mean. So it was just thoughts
Quite
like that
accurate.
hadn't really crossed my mind, I guess.
So it kind of sounds like what you're talking about is like maybe using one hand to just play kind of a little bit like behind or ahead of the beat. So
Yeah.
like, was that the first time where you were like, oh shit, in my whole drumming kind of upbringing, I never really touched on that.
So luckily, it wasn't the first time.
Okay.
But I was a super amateur at it because the only time I'd ever experienced it was in the other extreme, where because I got into the roots a little bit. Like, that was the only kind of hip hop I ever listened to because it's real drums. It's Questlove, just playing a groove, not playing a crash, not playing a fill. That's the kind of the meat and potato stuff that interests me. And there's guys like Chris Dave and some other drummers out there that are ridiculously good at doing what some people call the drunk feel.
Mm-hmm.
And drunk for people that just don't know, if you don't know what a drunk feel would be, it's basically just like one aspect of the groove is lazy, like the kick and the snare right on where they normally are, but the hi-hat is like laid every time, like almost like everything's flamming or delayed or late. And there's different ways to do that. You can push it and pull it and make it a quintuplet or just a little bit late or a little early. There's all that nuance going on in a lot of those hip hop guys, and that's the stuff that I really want to be able to play. But it's such difficult stuff for me to sit down and work on in a way where I work on the coordination stuff. It's not the same if you just slow it all down and try to work on it. It is helpful, but it's not the same approach where it's like
this thing your muscles are kind of just built for from day one.
It's not a foolproof slow down, play the parts over and over again, and you'll get the feel. It's you need to understand what's anchored here, what's the movement part,
Right.
like if the hi-hat is or where that's going, and why that's there. Like what's the purpose of that in the song that you're playing. So a simple song like Rockland was. It really ended up just being a subtle movement that was so much less than I would try to attempt if I was trying to play one of those hip hop things.
Yeah.
But the motion was there, and and being able to like know that I had played the extreme other end of it made it a lot easier to just touch it a little.
Yeah,
bit.
like ease into it. Yeah.
And that's the approach I take with dynamics. I work with when I'm practicing and warming up and stuff like that. I play really big accents and then tiny notes otherwise, so that I'm playing the biggest dynamic. I'm widening the dynamic shelf as much as I can, because if you can do that, then you can sort of find anywhere in
Yeah,
between
you give
need
yourself
to go.
headroom, I guess, right?
Exactly.
When you were learning the Shape of Color songs, that was Travis Orban, and that guy's a friggin' lunatic.
Yeah.
But how did you use that same approach when trying to learn his parts, like kind of giving yourself that headroom?
Yeah, in ways. The funny thing about the Shape of Color stuff was that, luckily, walking into it, and this is the fun, like when it was getting recorded, I remember actually we were playing at the Hard Luck, which we were talking about earlier.
Shout out to Hard Luck.
Oris was playing the Hard Luck, and Aaron Marshall came out, and it was in the middle of Shape of Color recording, and Orban was there in the city at the time, and they were tracking drums, and he was saying how fast he was doing it, whatever. And I was like, dude, you gotta get anyone else. Like, I love Orban. Orban's the best, but like, I'm sitting there going, you are going to ask. Like, I'm going to be the one playing this stuff. I already
Yeah.
know I am. I mean, there's a chance I'm not, but it's like we've talked about it in the past, and like I'm the only kind of local person that he has a relationship with as a drummer, or that plays progressive stuff.
Yeah, you're like the
obviously.
go-to guy.
I'm just one of the only people that shares that interest, I
Right.
think, with him, which is sort of why the Auras thing works so perfectly, because we're weirdly all exactly the same way in that capacity. So he was doing that stuff, and I remember thinking, yeah, like if it was anyone in the world, it would be so much easier to make sense of some of the stuff he's doing.
If it was anybody else.
Literally, almost in the world.
Yeah, well, because he's ambidextrous drummer, so it's
Oh,
like
that's the drummer you showed me yesterday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
where
he-
he was playing all the Pete Peterson stuff.
It's
Yeah.
the Pete Peterson
Yeah.
That
stuff's
stuff's
retarded.
crazy.
It's the approach on the drums that's so. He comes from here, I come from here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm single foot rock. Like, I'll play Rockland all day, but I played a lot of punk rock stuff with a single foot only. So my right foot is very dominant in almost every way. It doesn't matter what's dominant. He'll pick what's dominant at the
yeah,
moment.
and he sight reads.
And yeah, and
which-
that inherently just changes the way that you approach orchestrating drums, because everything else has to come from a right-handed or one-sided person's perspective. And for me, it all came from feel-oriented. Like, you write parts based on your emotion at the time. Like, the things that are happening, you hit with them, because that
Mhm.
invokes more emotion on the hard-hitting stuff. And the softer stuff, you let breathe a little bit more. Things like that. Whereas I feel like with Aaron wrote a lot of the parts, he programs a lot of the drum stuff, and he's a great drummer too. He actually wrote a few of the fills on it that were like, when I was figuring it out, he was like, oh, here's the fill, like I wrote it.
Like,
I was
which ones?
Oh, that fill. There's a fill in Black Box, which I actually have to relearn because we're playing that on the next tour. It's the one that's like a drum fill at the end by itself. It's just
okay, yeah.
it's it just has the thing riding off the floor tom. I know that made no sense. But yeah, so it rides like off the floor tom, and it has this double stroke ghost note, whatever. It's got this pattern, and Aaron's like, oh yeah, this is the pattern.
And he just played it.
Yeah, you didn't even have to play it. He was like, this is how I approached it, and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense.
Oh,
Like that,
interesting.
beautiful. Like, let me just play that 20 times and get used to it. So with the Orban stuff, walking into it, Aaron said, listen, I know, do not play this note for note. I know you're not going to. I know you're not going to want to. I don't even want you to. I want
Good.
you to be comfortable with it. And I guess from my end of things, like, try not to change the song, but that's not what I'm going to do anyway, because I'm listening to what the guitars are doing and all the parts that drums lock with guitars or bass or whatever. That's the
Right.
stuff I'm immediately going towards anyway.
Right.
It's just the other stuff that's outside of it. And a lot of people tell me they don't notice it. Even drummers are like, I listen to the record all the time, and I can't really tell that I can tell you're doing some different fills, but I don't feel like anything's changing. And that's really the ultimate goal with it. But yeah, a lot of it is it's been slowing things down to like 60% time. I use this app called Capo. I used to work for the guy. He's incredibly smart, and it just slows the song down, and you can see it, and you can set up loops, and you can do all these amazing things. So I can just focus on one part really slow, and like I said at the beginning, just feel like it's a completely different groove altogether, and then it becomes so embedded in your system that you can't shrug it off. That's a Matt Garska approach too. He starts slow. That guy plays for
Yeah, that guy's another.
I think he said something like half an hour on the slowest tempo, and then he starts adding to it. Like, half an hour is an insane amount of time.
Yeah.
10 minutes is an insane amount of time. Like, imagine doing the exact same groove. Like, dude, it's not. It's just one of those
Yeah.
things where it takes an insane amount of patience,
Yeah.
and like that's where I try to find workarounds to patience. I try to make it enjoyable, or in a way, or like I'll warm up both sets of my like hands and my feet at the same time, so I'll make something of it. But yeah, that guy's just got patience that shows, because you listen to Animals as Leaders, like,
Yeah.
or anything else he does, like Gem, and everything he does is ridiculous. I have a record that he did, like a jazz record, Louis Dumais, and it's just a constant play for me, because it's just silly to listen
Yeah,
to.
it's,
It's one of those
it's
things.
really
Yeah.
hard to like wrap your head around some of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
the tricks.
That's kind of like Pete Peterson. It's like
Yeah.
he sounds like it's really good, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff
There's
going on.
substance,
Yeah.
it's a great arrangement.
Yeah, but it's
Fucking
like kind of
insane.
silly. Like when you
Yeah.
listen to it, you're just
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, this guy's like having a lot of fun writing this. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And that goes back to that original state. Like, why? Like, obviously these people are enjoying what they're doing, and I'm just glad. Like, I'm not gonna sit there and rip on someone like Pete Peterson for writing a weird song. 'cause
No.
it was like look
Yeah.
at Frank Zappa. You know, like the guy's a fucking genius.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you don't have to get his music to know or to like accept that he's a genius, and that's the constant battle I think we face with a lot of people with just genre crossing and people not respecting country artists or not respecting metal artists or whatever. It's like you guys all know we're on the same team.
Yeah,
right?
I think it all goes down to like the
We're all
whole
here for the
classical
same-
versus jazz kind of
Yeah.
thing. It's
Yeah.
like I think it stems just from that whole
There's always
people want to pick a
competition.
side, people want to do that, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's a competition thing. It's a human nature.
Yeah.
Aspect of it. And you know, people who's the best guitar player. You hear that stuff all the time. Neil Peart's the best drummer in the world. It's like, do we need to talk about any of this stuff? I don't think we need to anymore because it's like there are so many role models and there are so many mentors that you can grasp onto. People are willing to share their information. You know, like it's such a healthy environment. The internet's the best thing for it. Like there's a lot of negative stuff, but those people have always been there. Some of the people are maybe more negative because they have that veil in front of them, but
Right.
the rest of it's just
YouTube
like,
commenters.
It's the same
Don
people,
Peterman.
You're just seeing them more often, you know. It's like I don't know. That's just my opinion on the whole thing.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I wanted to ask you, when you're playing in a band, you're making records. Every member kind of brings this like really unique aspect, be it guitar, vocals, bass, drums. But I feel like the drums may not be the most standout, unique aspect that a lot of people latch onto right away.
In certain genres.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like the average listener?
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Like what kind of flourishes and stuff do you like to put into the music to kind of like grab somebody who is this something that you ever think about?
No. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm not there to be showcased. Like, and it sounds like cliche and whatever, but it really, even when I was younger, this is one of those things that like hand in hand with learning that it was going to be impossible to be a working musician. I also learned that, you know, it's so much more about the song than it is about each person. And like, yeah, while there may be some parts where I'll take the advantage of the fact that I have a section to write a drum fill that nothing else is intruding in or whatever, nothing else is stepping over, I still want to make sure that it's the thing that you want to hear at that moment,
Sure.
you know? So like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that it's kind of ironic because I like to listen to music that sort of surprises me in that way, but and I'll offer surprises in that sense, but that's not really me doing that as a drummer. That's
Right, you're
us
not like you're
applying
not
the
setting out
drums.
to be like, okay, this is the moment where I'm gonna show off.
Yeah, it's us applying the drums in that section or that area to apply that factor, to
Sure.
apply that wow factor or whatever the case may be. But yeah, there's definitely like some moments where it feels like that's the case. And it maybe was initially that way, and maybe we're just too far. We just don't realize that it is a little bit arrogant of a part or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I think you get that feedback at one point or another, usually from other band members or whatever. If it's stepping on what they're doing, then that's not.
Sure.
But you do want to keep the listener engaged. So maybe
Right.
that's your excuse. at the
Yeah,
end
I
of
was
the day.
I was kind of interested because when you listen to like auras, like it's such a tight unit sound, right? Like it's like this all encompassing thing, and it never seems like anybody is kind of like stepping on each other's toes or anything. So clearly, that's exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's just part of the
Oopsie daisies.
I think it's part of the fact that we're all doing it together. Like some bands will be one person. Like for example, Aaron Marshall writes all the interval songs. And obviously, I think he's a good example. And again, biases because I'm in the bands, but there's a lot of guitar players that will write like, you know, backing tracks so that they can write guitar on it. And I find that it's not the way that Aaron approaches it, which is probably why I like playing the music so much, is because they're just great. If you take all the lead guitar away, you got great songs to listen to.
Still bangers.
Yeah, and I actually do it at home all the time. I drop all the stems in a session and just mute him, And usually when I'm learning stuff, I do
Sorry,
that.
Aaron.
I do it just to not distract myself in that way, because sometimes my initial my initial like reaction is to play on some of his notes too, because as a drummer you listen to the bass player and you latch onto that stuff, and with auras it's the rhythm guitar as well. So there's just more and more things that I find myself having to accentuate rhythmically.
Right.
But that's not really the case in some stuff. Whereas like there's old songs, like before Shape of Color, like the Matahari stuff, or sorry, the In Time stuff. When we play Matahari, he plays a solo near the end, and he does this like triplet, which instead of like the drums just da da da, just playing like quarter notes or eighth notes. When I first filled in for intervals back in 2012, I just had the inclination to latch onto his lead part at that moment and play da 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 like a little triplet in that point, and I still use it to this day, and it still gives me joy every time, because it's still one of those things that if I was there on that day, maybe I would have thought to put that in, but now I'll never know, but I never want to know, because I gained so much from what was already there to begin with, that of course my brain's going to go and add stuff. But when that song was a blank slate, like I can't imagine, like every decision to add or subtract something is a musical decision that you have to make, right? So
It's cool.
And I love the hell out of Anoop, and he's like such an insanely good player that like it's a great challenge, because he plays more like a human like me, but he plays usually faster and harder and crazier shit than I can play.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always like keeping me on my toes to play any of the older stuff. And then there's the Orban stuff where it's like you can do it yourself, but you still have to pretty much play a lot of this stuff.
Stay within the lines, basically.
Yeah, that's why the last record I was like, thank God I get to go just do it myself. Like get to decide if something with Aaron, but if something makes or doesn't make the record or whatever. But at least at that point, I now have this muscle memory embedded pretty much exactly the way that it's supposed to be.
Sure.
So I'm not fighting to recreate fills or changing fills so that I'm more comfortable. It's a battle.
So, how did the whole intervals journey begin?
Well, the first tour that I filled in for was because Anoop was playing for this guy Jeff Loomis, who played for Nevermore and stuff. I think he was in Europe with him at the time. And actually, this whole thing just came full circle recently, because we just finished that tour with the Contortionist, and we're about to go out on tour with Veil of Maya. Well, this is hilarious. So in 2012, there was a tour that was supposed to happen: Veil of Maya, Contortionist, and Your Memorial. And Intervals was asked to play the Toronto show. And Anoop was gone, so Aaron was like, okay, so I have this thing, like we have this show. Do you want to play this one show maybe? And then the next day he called me and was like, Veil of Maya just dropped the tour, because they just got a tour with Devil's Prada and August Burns Red in Europe. It was like a huge tour for them. And at the time, too, 2012, like still Devil's Prada's peak, and everything was going great. So really smart on their part. Like it's always tough to like turn down tours and whatever, but it was like 6 dates or something like that, or 8 dates or something like that. So we basically convinced the promoters and Contortionists to shift up, be the headliner, have Your Memorial, and then bring intervals on for all the shows. Aaron and his manager Brett at the time devised this whole plan and figured out how to convince people to do it, and they said yes. And then he called me back and was like, never mind, it's 6 shows, you got time? I was like, okay, cool. It was like October or something, end of October 2012, right when they were releasing In Time. We actually released it that weekend, day before Halloween or something like that. And so yeah, that happened. And then I went back out with Auras on tours and did a couple records, and that he obviously knows that's my band. So there's and we play shows together. We were playing shows together back in the day too, when they did a couple release shows and things like that. So and then the sort of departure of every other member other than Aaron, like when they sort of parted ways, and he just kind of decided to do it on his own. I remember there was a day he and I went down to go see the Contortionist in London, and he had just finished making the record. So this is after the Hard Luck day, when I was like, why are you getting Orban to play drums on it and stuff? And he was like, yeah, so I'm going to put the record out in a couple months. Probably not going to tour on it. I'm just going to see what happens. Like, don't really know what the story is here. But, it's basically, it was the riskiest thing I think he'd done, just because it was such a different musical style in that sense too. Like he kind of took a pretty big turn compared to what I think people have expected, especially with vocals in the last one. Anyway, you can take whatever you want out of that, but the point is that I was like, okay, like cool, you're gonna not tour on it, and you're just gonna make records, I guess, and see what you're gonna do at home. That's what I got out of it. Maybe a week and a half later or something, I got a call from management, and yeah, it was Brett, and he was like, yeah, we're doing I think 5 or 6 weeks across North America, headline. And I was like, headline? He's like, yeah, we're bringing Pliny, doing he's gonna come out, and Angel Vivaldi and this other band, Save Us from the Archon. I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing that. So I hopped on that, and then we had another tour, and then we just keep doing it.
Just keep
That's
going.
essentially where we're at.
Yeah,
That's cool,
That's
that's
cool.
cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it just sort of made sense because I'm the only other guy in Ontario too. Like the other member, like Jake was from New York, Sam is from Winnipeg, and when it's not Sam, it's Thomas, who lives in Tampa Bay. So it's like
Guy's a
having
beast.
someone else. Yeah, he's
That blonde guy?
ridiculous.
Yeah, he was
Having
at the
someone
Maxwell
else.
show. Yeah.
Having someone else just local in that sense to be there. And with writing and recording all that stuff, like I just went to his apartment. We just worked on the songs. Like I just programmed drums while he sat there, or vice versa, and it was just so much easier than having to be in a Skype meeting and whatever, and like,
Right,
cool.
for sure.
we're on the phone all the time. So
I think I was at that show at Vinyl when you guys played with the Contortionists, and you guys were in the morph suits.
yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Holy
that was probably
shit.
one of the first, like.
I think I still
Take
have
off-
that morph suit. Actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
have been Halloween. You know what's funny about that
Yeah.
tour too? So that was like, yeah, I think I said it was 7 or 8 shows or something like that. The only day off was Halloween. But that show was on the 30th or something like that.
Yeah,
I
it was like
can't
the day
remember.
before or after Halloween or something like that.
Might have been after.
Yeah.
Because the day before we had a Halloween party or something in Toronto.
Okay.
But on Halloween, my cover band had a gig, a Halloween gig to play in Guelph, and our show at the Vinyl was that the day before, the 30th, it must have been. So we played the interval shows on the 30th in Guelph, which was perfect. And then the next day we had off, so I just played my gig with my cover band
Oh, that's
in the
dope.
morph suit. I put it back on. It smelled like
Nice.
shit from like a sweaty show, and then we had 2 or 3 more dates still left on that run.
That's awesome.
So I got working like in the middle of it, It was kind of like I gotta do it. I was there. It was perfect.
What morph suit was it again? Which
It's like
what was
muscles.
the design?
It was pure like
Yeah.
human muscles.
Oh yeah,
Just
yeah.
really weird looking.
Yeah.
The
All right.
face was awful. Like,
Yeah.
and I had to cut. I had to cut
I feel like it's kind of
things.
appropriate that it smelled bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I threw it out last year because I was like, this is
Just
gone.
in a room like
I
rotting.
might still have it though, but ugh,
That's
I
hilarious.
don't want to think about that.
Yeah. R.I.P. Vinyl.
Yep.
Yeah.
What
yeah.
happened?
I don't.
Yeah. It turned into like street light or something like that. And it was like a club.
Oh
It's
damn.
never
really?
really.
Well,
But
it's
they got district and
Jimmy Jazz.
yeah, Jizzy Jams.
Jizzy Jams?
That's what I always called it.
Very nice.
Yeah, we used to go there after the vinyl shows and just get drunk and watch the punk bands play. Like
Hell yeah.
that was a good time.
Uh,
The Contortionist guys actually, all like got really. I remember everyone but whoever was driving because they were sleeping. There was like 6 of them in there. And just turned the place apart. Like Jizzy Jams went to like the roof that night. And there was like some weird folk band playing, and we just like it was like we raged in there. It was such a weird, funny
That's
night.
awesome. Was that like a bonding moment, or did you guys all like know each other pretty well before then?
It was probably a bonding moment. I
Yeah.
can't remember. It was so long ago.
Because I felt like at that time when all those bands were like on the come up, everyone was kind of like getting to know each other because everyone's going on these tours for the first time
Yeah.
together now, like,
Yeah.
going with Veil of Maya and stuff like that. I mean, like, you guys probably just know each other at this point, or at least slightly, maybe.
I only know the Veil guys mainly because Auras has played with them a couple times. They stayed
Yeah.
over at the old Auras house when we lived together, and Mark ate all my Chipotle fucking spice that I had. He was like, "You got anything hot?" And I was like, "I got this." he used all of it within like 2 days or a day or something.
What a
Yeah.
madman.
But yeah, it's definitely been a long time since then. But it's funny how much how many people were in that exact same position kind of
Yeah.
at that time. But we were still pretty late on the cusp. I think I'm still sort of one of the newcomers in this.
Well, I mean,
sort of-
joining intervals, or do you mean auras? Like, in the
well,
newcomers?
just like in sort of the general touring public, I guess you could say.
Oh,
Like-
okay.
Like the if you mention someone, like a merch guy that you used to work with, and someone else in the band that you're touring with, also tour with. That's the circle.
Oh,
kind of-
okay.
and but it's weird because everyone kind of knows each other from different things. A lot of people know for each other from Warped Tour. You get a lot of
R.I.P.
I
Warped
hear- Yeah, I
Tour.
hear
Hey,
a lot
you
of
see
stories
Except it's
the-
coming
about
back
that.
this year.
Have you seen the new lineup for Warped Tour, the 25th anniversary thing that they're doing this
I
summer?
think like one show or something like
It's,
that. Or 3 shows.
I think it's 2 or 3 shows, but 2 of them are like the main lineups, and one is in California, and
in
I don't know where and the lineup is just like insane. Like it's
Good
just
Charlotte.
ridiculous. It's like
Yeah.
every Warped Tour like
I mean, it makes sense because
veteran
like,
you can
may as well-
imagine.
like no one of that stature wants to go on Warped Tour. Like Warped Tour kicks your ass. Like from what I've heard, like
oh
I've
okay.
heard countless people just tell me that it's
it-
tough.
it's a
Like it's
grind?
really tough. Yeah,
Like-
I mean,
like-
especially if you're in a van or something. But even the bands that get a bandwagon and stuff, like it really is like you're lucky you got a shower in there. But there's a lot of situations
Yeah.
where it's just a long day. You know, you don't really get many days off. I don't think.
Yikes.
I've just heard from a lot of people that it's just a grind, you know. But you meet everyone, like you meet fucking tons of people that you
That's
never thought you'd
insane.
meet. Like, yeah, like it could be anyone really, but just there's just all kinds of characters there.
Kind of like going to NAM in a
Yeah.
in a more open sense, because
Yeah.
I feel like NAM is like that, just
Yeah,
that weird thing
it's-
where you turn the corner and you're
Mhm.
like, whoa, it's like 3
my
of
first
my people I look up to. Like
my first
yeah.
NAM experience was hilarious because I was walking out the door on the first day, and Kerry King was walking in with his son. But it was the funniest, most like kind of humbling moment. I'm sure he's used to it because he's a human being. But they, at the door they need your ID as well as you got your pass, but they also need your photo license to verify to correlate. So Kerry King, who doesn't know what Kerry King?
Yeah.
Tattoo on his head, like you can't miss him. Walks up to the door. They look at his thing. ID, please. And I'm just like, that's Kerry King. Like you can't. If someone can just impersonate Kerry King and pulls that off, like good for them.
Someone's like there in the
throat
hotel room
clap.
with a Sharpie, just
yeah,
like
he
Just
just
trying to
walking.
get it
but
down.
that was just one of those moments where I'm like, that's fucking Kerry King, but he's just a regular dude here. Like he's got to
Yeah.
walk in and show his ID just like everyone else,
yeah.
which is a hilarious.
I guess
it's
kinda
just one of those
humbling in a
moments.
way.
Yeah, totally. Well, it just shows you that like if you're going for like this sort of immortalized like rock star sort of thing, like you're probably not in the right industry.
Yeah,
You should
exactly.
Maybe try to be a movie star or something like that because
Yeah.
there's just a lot, but it doesn't matter anyway. I think because like there's so much, there's just such a human element to things that people forget that a lot of those people like just regular ass humans take
Yeah.
a shit a couple times a day, like normal stuff.
Play
happens,
drums on the shitter.
right? Right? Everyone's normal.
Be into vacuums.
Yeah,
Yeah.
into them. Yeah.
So later in the summer, you guys get to play with Dream Theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slovenia.
How wild is that?
Yeah.
That's crazy as hell. I never really. My roommate actually was like, "What the fuck, man? You gotta bring me to fucking Slovenia. Like, I can't believe you get to play with Dream Theater. Like, I've always wanted to see them. It's going on, and I don't even know if we can see them. I'm almost positive we can't
Yeah.
because it's like a 7-day festival. Where I think we're playing on the 3rd day. So that's the first show. Is just a side note, but that's the first show of that Europe. That's the second leg. We're doing 2 legs in Europe for this year, so we can split up the festivals, the more important ones. And the second leg starts on the 23rd. Is that festival, but that festival starts on like the 21st. And when I first saw that thing, like the poster for it, we didn't know what day we were. And Bullafest is the 20th. Dad's 60th birthday. Gotta go. 100% gotta be there. Looking at this poster, going, fuck, July 20th. I'm gonna maybe have to miss this tour. Like, I can't miss Bullafest. Nope. That's the first show, 23rd. We're leaving on the 21st. Bullafest 20th. I'm gonna be there.
Hey.
So it just
Oh.
worked out perfectly, and maybe I can thank Dream Theater personally. I don't know. Like, thanks for making sure we're not early on, but not too late.
That's a real
well.
sweet and humble way to kick off the
Yeah.
tour.
Yeah, yeah. It's just good to know that I can see everyone and all that stuff
Sure.
and see my dad on his 60th birthday. Like,
Yeah,
that's
hell yeah.
just
uh,
huge.
I'm gonna miss. I think I'm missing my grandma's 90th in this next run, which is just one of those things. It's like I do need to make a better effort while I'm home to see them as often as absolutely possible. My sister's way better than me. She lives in Calgary and flies back all the time.
Right.
But yeah, when I do end up missing out on a few things, but they understand for sure. Because
Yeah.
What else am I gonna do?
For
right?
sure. Well, it's good. It's good that they're kind of on the same page with you. They can be understanding of your time commitments elsewhere.
Yeah, and they've watched me be obsessed with this for
Yeah.
my entire life. So.
Cool. So we're about to wrap up. I think in about 5-10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Do you guys have your firing round?
Yeah, we got a little firing round for you.
Oh,
Cool
right
with that.
on.
So Ian will toss you
That
some
goddamn water bottle.
little one-liners, little statements, and you kind of just toss us back the first thing that comes to your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Sound good? All right.
I think I do remember seeing this with your episode with Brandon, actually.
Nope, didn't
I
do it with
listened
him.
to it. No?
Only did it with Kyle Wappler.
Oh, I actually did listen to that, the end of that.
Oh,
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
you
yeah,
guys
yeah.
got it at the end there.
All right.
Okay, all right. I'm tripping.
Maybe the whole episode with Lockwood was a firing round.
Yeah, baby. All right, you ready?
I don't know.
Last one.
Well, I'm gonna do it anyways. Favorite extinct local band?
Kingdoms.
Drum triggers.
I use them all the time for gates.
Best concert.
Yes, in 2011. Oh, Meshuggah last year, actually, as well,
Okay.
in LA. Oh, my God. Meshuggah. Sorry, go on.
Coming to Brazil.
Periphery just announced they're going to Brazil today, and I almost commented on that. Come to Brazil.
I saw a comment that said, "Coming to Brazil intensifies."
Dude, that's insane. Okay, I love that.
Harmony Lunch.
I haven't been there yet, but I've seen lots of I love watching Kyle's videos of the shows there, and I told my roommate to go talk to Kyle to go play some shows there.
Oh, nice.
So I gotta go see a show there at some point.
Cool.
Saturday?
Yeah.
Is that you
We're
guys?
we're playing
Are
there.
you guys playing?
Yeah.
What time?
Yeah.
All right, I'll probably come out.
Cool.
All right.
Big Music Fest.
Big music fest.
Big.
Oh, in like Brantford or whatever.
No, the one that was in McLennan Park with their.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
McLennan Park. I don't know why I didn't know it was there. What, yeah. That's the one that's defunct or like.
Yeah,
the
Aerosmith, yeah.
Yeah, that's a piece of shit.
Yeah. There we go. Good.
I don't know much about
All
it.
right.
Yo, hell yeah, it's a piece of shit.
Yeah. I don't know.
Worst concert.
Oh God. Oh. Shit. This is tough. Oh, it took me too long to think of it. I don't want to. No.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Best drummer. I know we talked to you.
Benny Greb.
Okay.
Yeah, he's on Nick Johnson's new record, which comes out Friday.
Nice.
Like, in 2 days.
And lastly, worst drummer. I'm just kidding. We're done.
Worst concert.
Oh, okay. There's an answer.
Meg White.
All right.
No, I'll never say that. Because she did play her part, I think, perfectly. Personally.
All right.
Hey.
Well, that's good. We're done.
That's good. That was an easy enough firing round.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I thought you were going to say like hot dogs or hamburgers or something, because I don't.
Hot
I
dogs.
don't like
All
picking-
right.
picking one of
Ketchup or
those two.
mustard?
Oh,
Our hot dog
I
sandwiches.
Ooh,
like Dijon.
ketchup.
I like Dijon and granny mustard, and we get this German mustard we call toothpaste mustard.
That doesn't sound good at all.
Yeah,
Toothpaste.
but it's in like a
interesting.
toothpaste thing. It's- my
Oh,
mom's like- My
okay.
mom's weird with names and
Comes
shit.
in like
but
the Arm and
it's-
Hammer like yellow one.
that's kind of what it looks like. Yeah, it's blue and yellow.
I brush
really
my
weird.
teeth with it.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hate ketchup. I don't know. It's just like
I mean, don't put it on steak. That's for sure.
I told you people do it.
Yeah, I know, man. Trump does it. It's fucked up.
That's sick. I knew there was something wrong with that dude, but I didn't know it was to this
Oh,
extent.
He's ill.
That's the
dude.
worst of all.
Hell yeah. All right, boys, you want to wrap it up?
yeah.
Always
Thank
do,
you.
dude.
You want
All
to plug
right.
anything or anything like that?
Biff,
Oh.
we're sorry. You'll have to
Audio
save your
Biff.
material for next week, I suppose.
Anything you guys want to say?
Um,
Anything you want to plug? Follow you on socials.
New Aura's record coming out this year. I'm super, super, super excited to put it out. Like, I've never been this excited to put anything out in my life. I just
Dope.
have to say that. But
On the
it
record.
doesn't matter if it means so much to anyone else or if anyone even likes it. I'm just really excited to have it in the public eye at some point this year, hopefully by the middle of the year. So just give
Cool.
us some time to do it right. And yeah,
Fuck yeah, man. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
and-
thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
Remember to
This has been Nathan Bulla.
yes,
Sure
and
has been.
remember to
Fist.
Subscribe.
fist
That
that bell. Fist it.
Fist.